All right, who's ready for chapter two? Let's do it. So, I want to kind of recap one concept before we dig into the details. And chapter two, by the way, is going to be loan products. We're going to talk about fixed, kind of first adjustable, aka floating rate loans. Now, I want you to keep in mind with this section, right? We're kind of dividing this up into really two major parts. One is dealing with banks, and two is dealing with investors, right? Kind of debt versus equity, right? Debt being, you owe the bank debt, but they technically don't own a piece of equity in your property. And again, this kind of gets into nomenclature. I want you to feel these things as opposed to just, hear the words, what's the definition of this? What's the definition of that? So with the banks, that's debt. With equity, aka kind of like investors, right? People that you're giving a percentage equity of the company over for their investment. So with banks, think negotiate. With investors, think do what's right and understand your customer. Banks, negotiate. Investors, do what's right and know your customer. And we'll dig into this more, but we talked about this a little bit in the beginning, which is with an investor, they all have different goals. And so one, you got to do what's right. You got to be transparent. I mean, that's the reason I'm doing this video. It's transparency. If you are a potential investor and you want to know how we do it, well, guess what? God knows how long this video is going to be. I got a 3, 4, 5 hour long video talking about every single aspect that I can think of our deals. And you can grill me on every single one. So with banks, though, it's kind of the other way around. These guys, they are at the knowledge advantage, if you will. And you need to know all the different things that they're putting into these loans, and you need to be able to negotiate with these guys. All right, let's get into it. We're still on the negotiation. Loan products, fixed. These typically are going to have good terms, but there's going to be a prepayment penalty. And I love this concept of why prepayment penalties exist. I think you're going to love this too, if I can explain it properly. And then, of course, floating, these kind of variable rates. There's a risk of interest, right? It's this interest risk, which can also be an interest benefit if rates go down, but less prepayment penalty. And you're like, why would why would an adjustable rate not have a prepayment penalty? Funny you should ask there. Do I have the answer for you? All right. So the prepayment penalty, this is going to be with fixed rate loans. This penalty is basically, imagine you're a lender, right? You're lending out on a 30-year mortgage, 30-year loan. And, I say mortgage, that's not the proper term, but I'm trying to kind of frame this in the right way. And remember, semantics are important, but at the same time, I want you to have a deep understanding and not just semantics. Does that make sense? Again, I go back to that in the first video. I mentioned the one guy on YouTube, the one lender that talks about bridge loans and how there's literally 10 different types of bridge loans, and it's a horrible term. It's a very non-specific term. So with yield maintenance, aka a prepayment penalty, yield maintenance, basically the lender says, hey, I locked you in to this rate, and I was going to get all this interest. Say you're 10 years into a 30-year loan. And you're like, man, the bank said, I was going to get all this interest. I was going to get like $1 million in interest. Well, what the heck? You're trying to pay this? That's not fair. I want my interest. I had this all planned out. Well, that's what a prepayment penalty is. The bank effectively gets all the interest that they would have missed out on. And this is kind of based off of this risk-free rate. Basically, the bank says, well, I was guaranteed this amount of money based on this 10-year U.S. Treasury yield. And now you're trying to pay me back. I was effectively risk-free going to, oh, look, I have a little hover here. Oh, I love that. I'm trying to make these videos better for you. So it's not just my horrible, I know the handwriting, but the bank's like, hey, I was basically guaranteed to make this money. So what are we going to do about that, sir? Well, we're going to charge you yield maintenance, aka prepayment penalty. And this is, Rob used this term in the book. He said, this is 100% call protection. What a good way to put it, right? That's it. 100% call protection. I love it. They were going to make this money, and well, we're getting it no matter what. And this is only for fixed rate loans, right? Because a fixed rate loan, they locked you in at that certain rate. Now, if rates go up, so you buy your loan, then rates go up. Well, now the bank could effectively, so you got your loan at like 5%, right? And you waited 10 years, you're 10 out of 30, right? You're 10 out of 30, and rates are now, God help us, they're 10%. Well, actually, what's that going to do to your yield maintenance? That's actually good for you. Why? Because the bank's got you locked in at 5%, and then the bank could, if you pay back your loan, well, they can actually get a new loan at 10%. So it's kind of inverse. How much you pay for yield maintenance, aka prepayment penalty, is inversely correlated to what rates are. Because again, it's like, well, but now imagine the bank locks you in at 5%, and now rates go down to 2.5. And the bank, you pay them back, and now they're stuck getting another loan from some other guy, and he's only paying 2.5%. That's crummy, right? Again, 100% call protection. That doesn't apply for an adjustable rate loan. Because what's the work, if you will, that the bank does with an adjustable rate, the risk or the work or however you want to put it? Well, there's no interest risk from the bank side. Does that make sense? For you, there's interest risk that rates could go up or down. But from the bank side, it's exactly the same as if lending to you with an adjustable rate loan is the exact same as if they went out and got a new loan at every single day, right? Because that interest rate is changing every single, not day, but you got my point. So to them, it doesn't really matter if you refi or, prepay and, completely sell your property and prepay the loan, because they'll just get a rate or they'll just go get another loan at the same rate because it's adjustable. Now, there is some work that goes into the bank getting their loan, and well, that's why they charge fees. So for an adjustable rate, they don't charge a prepayment penalty, or they shouldn't. It's typically about 1%, and that gets into just the amount of work that it takes them to do the loan. So adjustable rate loan is going to be typically a 1% prepayment penalty, which is not a big deal. Right? It's something, it's real money, but it's not deal changing, game ending. But a prepayment penalty that is very large, 5% or more, with a fixed rate loan can definitely change the entire deal. And it may force you into a subject to scenario. You've heard about subject to. It's all kind of the craze, the rage right now. Well, it's not always good. It's good if you are a residential real estate investor and you're looking to assume somebody's mortgage that has a 2.5% interest rate, and current interest rates are like 7. Yeah, that's great. But now imagine you're buying a big commercial property, right? Self-storage or multifamily. Well, their loan might not be as good from an interest standpoint, and it might not be as good from a leverage standpoint, meaning how much cash is still left in the deal. So assuming that other person's mortgage might not be as good as new debt, a new loan, because they might have already, imagine that they've already paid off, 70% of their mortgage, right? Well, to you, that's kind of like, geez, look at all this cash that's left in the deal. And you will even have to sometimes, depending on the rate, you might have to go back and get another loan to cover they bought the facility, the self-storage facility, for $1 million, and you're going to assume that mortgage, and on top of that, you have to pay another $1 million because now it's worth $2 million, and you got to find more debt. And so all that together is just kind of like, oh, geez, that's a lot. More, not work, but it's not as advantageous as just getting a brand new loan at, say, 20, 30% down payment, 20, 30% equity that's put up. And yeah, so you might end up having to sell it for less, right? It may force you into a subject to scenario. And then you're not going to, if you try to sell your property, well, one, you might kind of not be able to, if you will, right? Because you have this huge prepayment penalty. You're like, oh, I'm stuck. So you should understand that these exist and they should go into your underwriting models. There's a concept called a step-down structure. We'll get into that a little bit later, where you can imagine the prepayment penalty is not just set based on the SOFR, or it's not set based on this exact yield maintenance, which takes into consideration, that treasury yield, but it's just a step down, you 5% at year, 10 and 9, 4% at 8, 7, 3%. So it's like, a very well-known percentage. So that kind of gets rid of some of that risk as well. So step down might be reasonable to consider, a little more easy to underwrite a step down prepayment penalty, because you know what the prepayment penalty is going to be. Now, floating rate debt, the good and the bad. Well, we know what the good is, right? The good is the fact that that the interest rates might go down. The bad is that they might go up. Okay, fine. Now, they're typically going to be a 1% prepayment penalty. We talked about that before, right? Floating rate loans are not going to have this adjustable yield maintenance. Because, again, the bank doesn't really care. Yeah, it's some work to make the loan, but the bank doesn't have that risk. We'll go back to that risk one more time. Remember, that risk would be like the bank buys the loan, the bank locks you in at 5%, and then rates go down to 2.5%. That's a bad scenario for the bank, right? And then you pay back everything and you refinance at 2.5. Bank don't like that. That's why they have a repayment penalty. But with adjustable, that's not a thing. But what is a thing is your risk, aka the bad, right? What if the rates go way up? That's no bueno. And now you got this adjustable rate loan and rates are going through the ceiling. Well, you can buy a strike, aka an interest rate cap. How do you do that? Think of it kind of like buying points, right? You buy points to decrease your interest rate. You're just paying cash to decrease risk, or paying cash to decrease your interest rate, as you would buy points, right? So a strike is you take a hedge counterparty. These guys, this is the entity that does this, and you literally purchase an interest rate cap, and they say, for this much money, we will make it so that if the rates go over X, Y, or Z, then you don't have to pay that extra interest. So an interest rate cap, and the banks might actually make you pay or make you buy an interest rate cap through one of these hedge counterparties. There's also something called a swap. So a strike is that true interest rate cap. So say your interest rate cap is 6, your current rate is 3. It's like cap 6%, current rate 3%. So you're still going to pay 4, 5, 5.5, right, as that goes up. But then once you hit 6, it caps right there. So if rates go to 7, you don't have to pay that extra interest. You just pay the 6. That's the cap. A swap is different. A swap is where you literally just effectively buy a fixed rate through one of those hedge counterparties. You buy a fixed rate. Rate of note, rate caps have gone up in price because you can imagine these guys, underwriting, is that the right term? I don't know if that's the exact right term, but you can imagine these guys that are these hedge counterparties, with the increased volatility in the market, they got to stop and say, ooh, and there's a significant risk. Like, what if right now rates are, 7%? Well, is it possible they go up to 10? I mean, I don't know. It's an unpredictable world. And if I want to put a rate cap at 7.5, I mean, there's real risk. There is real risk there. And so, 2 years ago, the banks might have said, an interest rate cap of 7.5. Psh, no, that'll never get like that. I know, right? So there's some gambling, if you will, that goes on in that world. Can I clean this up? A bigger eraser. I make my eraser bigger and click there. There we go. Oh, that's nice. Good eraser. Try to keep this clean for you guys. All right. Now, where were we? Basically, there's always an interest rate rise. You can purchase a cap at any price, right? You can always purchase a cap. So this is an interesting concept too. If you want to, you can purchase a cap. That's it. Why is that relevant? Well, imagine, oh, baby, you want it? Here, I'm finishing up. Come here. We're talking about coconut water. Here, let me talk to the very end. We'll talk about interest rate caps. Come here. All right, listen. So let's say you have a adjustable rate loan, okay? We're almost done. Look at the camera. An adjustable rate loan.
2 plus 2 is 2.
2 plus 2 is what?
2.
No, 2 plus 2 is 4, bro. Okay, listen. You got an adjustable rate loan, right? But you don't want it to be adjustable, okay? You could just purchase a cap right where you're at, close to the current level, the index rate. So you can buy that cap right there, and you have effectively created a fixed rate loan with a 1% prepayment penalty. The bank's happy, they satisfied their adjustable thing.
8 plus 8
And
is 16.
whoa, 8 plus 8 is 16?
Yeah.
Got that. And what did we say before? What is your favorite way to do a lockbox, aka a DACA? A springy DACA. Springy DACA. All right, everybody. Hopefully that was useful to you. Remember, banks, negotiation, investors, do what's right, and understand what the investor wants. We'll check you out for the next one.